let's directly come to the needles. So that will be our main difference of needles. So first of all, we have liner. And the liner is a combination of needles who are round. And it starts from having 3 needles together like this. And it goes to having like 5 needles together, something like this. They are like usually like in a circle. Then it goes to like 7 needles together, and so on. And the big difference between the liner, we have the liner, and then we have the shader, it's called. And the shader are usually like white. Just show you that a little bit extravagant. So I will open 2 of them now, so you actually can see. This is what is called a magnum, a shader, filler, and this is a liner. And you see already, the liner is made to make lines, and the filler or the magnum is made to make shadings and fillings. And there are, when it comes to shader, round shader and wider shader and flat shaders, and this is basically a magnum is when the needles are splitted. It's very hard to show you that on the video. And what the magnum does is it's like kind of splitted, like I painted here. And then you have the flat filler, what is basically like all in one line. But we don't want to use that. We only want to use magnum, because magnums are, in my eyes, the only thing what you really need. There are curved ones, there's flat one, but when you buy a normal basic magnum, flat magnum, this works for like pretty much everything. And the same is with the liner. You have the normal liners are like this, and in front the needles are like a little bit together. Let me like overpaint this like this. So they kind of like bend it together. So all the needles are like more spiky. They are like very, very spiky together. And you have the round shaders also. And the round shaders are like the needles who are like more open in the front. So there you actually have gapes in between, who makes it more easy to fill. Sometimes it can be nice for making outlines with it, but it always depends on how precise you want. So don't overthink the full needle situation so much. And back in the days when I started tattooing, there was pretty much liner, then there was shader and round shader, and the shader was magnums. And that's it, you know, and that's all what you have to know. All my career as tattooist, I was buying the cheapest needles, so you really don't have to invest a lot of money for brands here or there, or long tape, small tape, then the different size of the needles itself, and so on. And as a comparison, that is a 3-liner. That is like something I never really used, and I don't really recommend you to use. The more thin the needle are, that means the less needles in the actual needle, the more the chances you cut the skin, you break the skin. And also it's a lot more painful than it is when you use something like this. This is a 15 Magnum. This is probably the one Magnum I used for most of everything. You will have, depends on the size of tattoos you do, tattoo needles in a variety of sizes. You have like Magnums from using 5M for the 5 Magnum to this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 to a 15 Magnum. And this is like this needle right now, right here. And the same is with the liners, you know. You see here the comparison of 9 liner and the 3 liner. You see the difference of the needle already, and that is the difference of the line. So that means when you have, just overrated a little bit, the comparison between this two, you will see, you make a line with that, the line will be that wide, and you will make a line with that, the line will be like that thin. And that's something you see. It's like, it's so hard to say you have to use this for this, because it depends on the motif. You want to make a very small motif, you have to use smaller needles. You want to make a bigger design, then it's better to use bigger needles. I can recommend always to make your design better, a little bit bigger, and use a little bit bigger needles, because the chances you break the skin are less. The healing is usually a little bit better, and you make it yourself a lot more easy, because it's very tricky to work with the heavy machine in the back and a very small needle which you barely see. You see that needle is so small. See, we have it in here. You barely see that needle. It's so difficult to tattoo with that. So that's basically the main difference with the needles. And for the more advanced, you see, like, you take the Magnum, the tip of the Magnum, it's flat, and they have like the Magnums who are like a little bit round, but also this, honestly, I never used that fancy stuff in my life, and I never needed it, and I was very successful with tattooing without all the fancy stuff. And when you go back into the history of tattooing, there was a lot of great tattoo artists. They don't have the fancy stuff of these days, and they made amazing tattoos. So it's not much what you need. And when you only want start and you don't have so much, I can recommend you to get some 5 liners, some 9 liners, and get some 11 Magnums and some 15 Magnums, and that's it, you know, because you will have a different disposable tips for all of the needles. So you not just can take this and put it like in the round thing. It don't works, you know. And for the tips, it's the same. I mean, you will buy equipment, you will find out by yourself, because that's our disposable tips for 18 round liner, 18 diamond. And what the diamond means, let me clear the space here. So what the diamond means in the tip itself, it means it is like a diamond. So that means the needle will be always lying there. And I'm a big fan of just buying like this, like an 18 diamond. So that means the hole is very big. It's made for 18 diamond. And when you would put a 3 liner in, like the very small one, this is still working, because it is in the bottom of the tip. It sits here, and because of the rubber gum, you have the rubber gum around, and you press it to that side, and this will 100% work. So with the liner, it's very easy. You can get a couple of different liners and try around. You can get round shaders, which is like the liners, but the needles of the liner are a little bit wider open, and the liner needles are a little bit closer together. It's like your fingers. When you squeeze your fingers all together, that would be a liner, and when you would like open it, that would be like a shadow. And for this, it's also an easy trick. Old tattoo trick is that you don't need to buy round shaders, because when you want to open up the needle, all what you do is this. And now you see the difference. Get me another needle. I think I have to make some super close-ups from this, or I'm not sure if you can see that already. And you see, that's like the same needle, and it's just opened up. And it's just opened up with the lighter. And don't worry about black stuff, it's like stereo flames. So that's how you make a shader out of a liner, so you don't need to buy both of them. Also, sometimes it's very nice you make the lines and you want to have the lines a little bit wider, and you just open up. I always like to use a liner and open them a little bit for making all my outlines, because I just liked it more. It's felt better for me. It's like hard to say. You have to try it out and see what feels better for you. But that's like the two main difference with needles. Also for the grips, that's like the oversized Magnum tips you see. That's for like very, very big, you probably almost never need. And this is one of our own, and this is one made for the Magnums, and you see how that fits in very nicely. It fits in here, and here you already see you could not put a smaller needle in here because it will not work. It just wouldn't. You need always the right size of the Magnum grips for the Magnum needles. So that's why I recommend for the fillings, have like a 15 Magnum and have an 11 Magnum, and everything what is smaller, in my eyes, it makes no sense to have a 5 Magnum. Then you better use like a round liner which you open up for making very small fillings. But even very small fillings you can make with the corner side of a Magnum, like a calligraphy pen. You know, when you have a calligraphy pen, I can show you that quick here, very easy and fast. I mean, when you have a pen like this, this is pretty much like a Magnum, because it makes, you see, when I tip this, it has the same shape. So that means when I would go to the side, I have a line. So I 100% can make lines with this. I also can like put it a little bit on the side and use the point. And you see with the point, I can point. So that means when you normally would fill out like this, then you also can fill out like this. So it's no problem to even make a dot with a Magnum. And sometimes when you know it's only a very few little elements to fill, then it works also with a Magnum, you know, or it works just with the liner and you just use the liner for this. So that's the big difference with needles. It's very hard to say for what exactly you need what needle. All of this depends on your design and what you make out of it. Let's come to the different ink. So the ink I use for tattooing is mostly not so special, but you get it pretty much everywhere. I think you get all of the ink I use on Amazon or eBay. I will put some links somewhere. I put maybe a sheet where I put what I use for everything. And I use for the black and the outlines, the Kurosumi outlining ink. I use this for everything. It's a very cheap black. It's a very good black. I used this for like almost 2 decades. I made a lot of black with it. And it's this amazing ink. Very cheap, and you can use for filling, you can use for outlining. There are some people, they use like this special filling ink and this ink and that ink, and that is all like, oh, you don't need this, you know, you need one solid black and that's it. You can make filling with it, you can make shading with it, you add water. Also Kurosumi have the shading gray. This is a very nice thing I use for a lot of shading, which I just dilute with water, you know, like real black gray, you just dilute it with water. You also find different gray tones to buy, and then for the colors, I mostly use Star Bright or I use Intense. That's like the main brand of colors what we use. And yeah, you see Star Bright, Intense. Sometimes we have Eternal ink, but it's like very hard to say. And the reason why we here and I always used different brands was because sometimes you have one color from one brand who it's not so good to tattoo with, because it's so it's very hard to explain. But let's say I have this one red, this scarlet red from Starbright. It's like my favorite red, and it's the red I used for all my tattoos. But then there is some colors from Starbright which I like, the purple. It's like not nice to tattoo with. So I found a different company which I liked, where the color is easier to work. But all of this is a big feeling thing. So you have to try the color out and work with it. And this is the color from the cheap set, and we will try that out later on. They will probably work also, but yeah, they probably not tested, they like not nice manufactured in a very clean environment. They not have long-term tests in the body and so on, compared to something like Kurosumi, which a brand which exists like, I don't know, probably more than 20 years. That ink is in so much people. This get tested in a lot of countries, and this produced vegan, sterile, in a nice environment, big company, and get controlled and so on. So that is something I want to put in people's, not this. And you have to think the ink is it doesn't matter if you use cheap needles or cheap machines, or cheap plastic wrapping for the table. All of this doesn't matter so much, because the most important thing is that you use good color, because the color is what you put in the people's body. You implant that in the people's bodies, and this is what stay there forever. So that is really where I recommend you to not use something like this. To really better say you have less color, but you have good color. That's 100% what I recommend you. Get good color. When there's one thing you don't want to save money on, then it's the ink itself. So